Senate will please come to order. I owe you all an apology. When one is outside, one does not hear the bells ring. So my apologies to all of you who are waiting, although I imagine you used the time wisely in the chaos of our building. Are there any announcements? Senator from Chittenden Central.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. With regard to the yield bill, there have been some questions about amendments, time to bring them to the committee, et cetera. So I think rather than attempt to move that today, we will bring that up in the morning session tomorrow. So I would encourage folks with questions or amendments to be in contact with the chairs of Finance and Education about bringing those before the committee. Both committees will have a chance to complete work on their own amendments if they're making them, but it seems the better part of Valley to move to tomorrow morning with the yield. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there other announcements? Hold on a second. Hold on. I just want to make a couple brief announcements. I didn't want to make them on Friday. Everyone was exhausted. But as we cram through the end here, there's a couple of floor decorum things that I just want to remind folks of. One of which is when a senator is interrogating another senator, the recipient of the interrogation is to answer the questions. But if they want to then further elaborate after the senator who has the floor has indicated they're finished with the questions, it's actually, that's not the time to then further elaborate. You can always rise to speak to anything as a senator. But with respect to that cadence, it is the person who has the floor's space. Also, it has become more and more occurring that notes are being passed, sometimes 2 or 3 people down an aisle. And in general, if just for my sake, if I request that you utilize the pages, unless it's really right next to you, it does interrupt the flow of the conversation, both for the people who are speaking, because it's more activity visually, but also the person who might be between you and someone 3 people over. It interrupts their focus on the debate on the floor, which I think is very important. And not today, it hasn't happened, but if you're seeking conversation with counsel, that should be done in the window seats, not on the floor between you and a counsel person as well. Again, it's a little bit to keep this space reserved for the senators. And then lastly, a couple of flows when it comes to third readings, and particularly now proposals from the House that return on Senate bills. There is no automatic recognition of you if you have an amendment you'd like to offer, or if there's a concurrence with further proposal of amendment, even if it's in the calendar. The reason, when I ask you the question, that is then the time if you would wish to elaborate with a concurrence of further proposal of amendment, or to explain what the House may have done, or you'd like to offer your own amendment. If you don't rise, it is not actually my job to recognize you, because you may have chosen not to offer what you put in the calendar. So I just want to make those things clear to you, and maybe anybody else who might be wondering, why does he sometimes call on some and not others? With that, we have a House bill for reference, unless there's any further announcements. All right, we have H 888. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H 888, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the town of Hartford.
Now, you've heard the reading of the bills referred to Committee on Rules. That brings us to the orders of the day. I believe we're still going to pass. Oh, Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would move that we suspend our rules in order to bring a series of bills that we passed on second reading this morning up for third reading now. And I will read the list of those. H534, an act relating to retail theft. H644, an act relating to access to records by individuals who are in foster care. H707, an act relating to revising delivery and governance of the workforce system. H794, an act relating to services provided by the Vermont Veterans Home. H871, an act relating to the development of an updated state aid for school construction, and H745, an act relating to the Vermont Parentage Act.
Now, the Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate action for third readings, H534, H644, H707, H794, H871, H81, and H745. Not 81, I apologize. I am going to cross that right off. Not H81, H871, and H745. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended rules in order to take up for third reading H534, H644, H707, H794, H871, and H745. With that, we'll start with H534. Third reading has been ordered on H534, an act relating to retail theft. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H534, an act relating to retail theft.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed H534. We now have up for consideration H644. H644 is an act relating to access to records by individuals who were in foster care. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H644, an act relating to access to records by individuals who were in foster care.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed H644. We now have up for consideration H707. H7, third reading was ordered, and H707 is an act relating to revising the delivery and governance of the Vermont workforce system. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H707, an act relating to revising the delivery and governance of the Vermont workforce system.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed H794. No, 707. We now have up for consideration H794. H794 is an act relating to services provided by the Vermont Veterans Home. Third reading has been ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H794, an act relating to services provided by the Vermont Veterans Home.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've passed H794. We now have up for consideration H871. H871 is an act relating to the development of an updated state aid to school construction program. Third reading has been ordered. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H871, an act relating to the development of an updated state aid to school construction program.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. Question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed H871. We now have up for consideration H745. Third reading was ordered on H745. It is an act relating to the Vermont Parentage Act. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
H745, an act relating to the Vermont Parentage Act.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've passed H745. I believe we're passing over 121, and I've also been instructed we're passing over S191. I don't know at this point, are we taking up S58, little nod of the head there, Senator from Bennington. Are you ready for S58?
I'm ready.
With that, we will take up S58. S58 appears on your calendar on page 4051. S58 is an act relating to public safety. The pending question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment?
Mr. President,
Senator from Bennington.
S58 is an important bill as all of our efforts to deal with crisis. But also,
Point of order.
Senator from Bennington, we're actually having a little bit of difficulty hearing you. We're going to work and see if the amplification here could be turned up, but also I don't know if you can get slightly closer to your microphone as you speak. But
I can try it.
that's a little bit better, and we'll also work on getting some of our technical advisors in to see if that's better. Go for it.
As I was saying, S58 piece of the overall effort, reduction, treatment, and so forth, dealing with our opiate crisis. Interestingly, I want to compliment the other body, which I rarely do, as you know. For their good work on S58. They have basically left us with a very good bill, I think. And while we have a few areas of disagreement, and I will be offering an amendment to concur with further proposal. But some of the changes that they made are technical, some of them are significant. And I thought that one of them was particularly looking at the issue of how we deal with youth who are accused of now being 14 for signing the law. And setting up a study to look at how we can move up in the system. As you know, we've heard a lot of concern by a number of members about that area where certain states' attorneys tend to charge in adult court because it's so difficult to raise it up to adult or youth offender status later on. And so there's concern about the harm that's done to reputation and so forth for kids who may end up in the juvenile system or youth offender. So that task force is an important piece that your Senate Judiciary Committee is happy to support. Many other areas that they did good work on. The areas of contention, and I hope you have the amendment in front of you.
We do.
Go over that. 3 sections have to do with the knowingly standard. And this was an important part of S58. Because the knowingly standard that we currently have makes it very difficult when we know there was fentanyl in the drug, they knew there was fentanyl in the drug, or it was pure fentanyl. And they denied that they knew that. Quite frankly, what's happened to the United States and other countries, China, it's now replaced the heroin that was brought home. As they no longer are growing, it's no longer catastrophic. And it's sent to processed overseas, and sent to Central America, and makes its way across the United States up to Vermont and other states. So our proposal, the first thing, deals with that and knowingly standard. Second is knowingly actual knowledge of a regulated drug. And the third is deals with xylazine. And obviously so the first three amendments deal with the knowingly standard, bring it back into what we think is an important role. And the fourth amendment deals with the permissive inference. The House took out the permissive inference with death resulting. We agree to that, but we wanted the sentencing commission to look at that issue and report back to us whether they think it should be part of the laws with regarding death resulting or not. But they did not change other areas of we thought was a strong bill. The Fifth Amendment, Mr. President, your economic development affairs committee worked with judiciary. You remember the flat fighting of people that were in so-called trap houses or in places like Beckett House, Walker. And we felt that given the nature of it, and also taken out our use of the word, the court may include that beliefs that a person is prohibited from coming within a fixed distance of the dwelling. And yes, the court could do that without this sentence. We thought it was an important direction to our courts that we should not tolerate these types of trap houses anymore. And so we request that we concur with that amendment as well to ensure that that's there. Other than that, Mr. President, we Senate Judiciary Committee, the majority, supports this and asks us support.
So the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal amendment on S58 with further proposal amendment as offered by a senator from Bennington? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you've concurred with the House proposal amendment with further proposal amendment as offered by Senator from Bennington on S58. We now as per my announcements earlier.
Sorry.
We now have up for consideration S18. Boy, this is a lovely day. Somebody's phone, ping. All right, we now have up for consideration S186. S186 is an act relating to the systemic evaluation of recovery residences and recovery communities. Currently, the question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment? Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Health and Welfare reviewed the proposal as it came back from the House, and we are going to ask for concurrence by the full Senate. We voted 5-0-0 to support the language that you have in front of you on page 4079 and following. I'll briefly go through the changes that are included from the House. So as you recall, this bill is about identifying conditions for certification, Department of Health certification for recovery residents that might include current certification programs by the Vermont Alliance of Recovery Residences. We also had in our underlying bill a study about recovery residents in Vermont and a short section on rights and protections for residents. As it came back from the House, there were some clarification comments within the bill and also some additions to the bill on the reporting section and also on the rights for residents and how those rights might be ensured. So if you look at page 4079, I'll go through section by section very briefly. Clarification in section 1(a) was that we are assuring that recovery residences will be voluntary for certification. So they'll have to choose to obtain certification. There's some other minor changes in language. And then on still in section 1, number 6, there's we ended our sentence with including policies and procedures to be developed by the Department of Health, the various agencies involved, and recovery residences and others to produce recommendations for policies and procedures related first to residents' rights. And the House has clarified what and added some minimum standards for residential agreements between residents and the resident facilities. So those standards would include the contents of resident agreements, resident discharge policies, length of time a bed shall be held for a resident who temporarily exits a recovery residence, and criteria by which a resident can return to recovery in the event of temporary removal. So that was added in to the rights section. Then was also an addition, a number 7 and a number 8, the House added in that section to ask for a recommendation from the group working on this to identify a term for non-certified recovery residences, and also to identify minimum reporting requirements. One of our concerns when we passed our bill out was having outcomes, and how do we know that a recovery residence is actually being effective? So this clarifies the reporting outcomes to improve the measurement for those residences. Then the time for reporting was moved to January 15th. We had asked of 2025. We had asked for October 2024. Section 2 of the bill, the Department of Health is asked to complete assessment of both certified and non-certified recovery residences in the state. I believe that we had asked for only certified. This looks at a more holistic approach and evaluation of what we do already have in the state. And then some minor changes of location for the technical assistance that could be achieved. And remember, we had been working with a national group called the Fletcher Group on recovery residences. So that isn't, the technical assistance from folks is included. The date change for the reporting on this section is changed to December rather than October. The House also added two new sections and clarified the effective dates. Section 3 is a new section. It relates only to currently certified recovery residences, and currently residences that are certified through the Vermont Alliance of Recovery Residences. It's part of a nationally coordinated group. And so this section allows for recovery residents to develop a residential agreement for the folks who are in the residences, and including an exit and transfer policy for those residences. Addresses the length of time that a bed would be held. So some of the conditions for folks staying in the recovery residence, the criteria by which a resident can return, ensures a resident's possessions will be held for at least 60 days, designates alternative housing resident arrangements for a resident in the event of transfer, including contingency plans, alternative housing. Also describes the resident's substance use policy, which exempts the use of resident valid prescription medication. We also had this in our proposal. Also indicates that by signing a residential agreement, a resident acknowledged that the recovery residence may cause a resident to be immediately exited or transferred to alternative housing if the resident violates the recovery resident substance use policy, and so on. So there is also what's critically important is that when the resident signs written consent, that that doesn't happen until 7 days after the individual is in the resident in the facility. And that gives the resident an opportunity to settle in and become a part of the residence itself. This was added by the House. The House also added substance use policy conditions and bed stabilization or appropriately alternative housing should that be needed for someone leaving the residence. And this applies only to certified recovery residences that provide support and assistance for folks who are in recovery. Section 4, it relates to the reporting. So we'll get reporting back from recovery residences that are certified, and we'll be looking at folks who have left their recovery residences and how stable they have been. We'll also be getting that data will go to the Department of Health, and then the Department of Health will bring that to us on or before January 5th of 2025 and 2026. So we'll have 6 months of data going forward each time. And then, so then Section 4 includes the reporting requirements by both recovery residents and Department of Health. That was all modified and changed and brought to us by the House. And then that reporting requirement will be repealed in July 2026. And simply because by that time, we'll have a more robust certification process and understand the conditions for residents being in resident at a recovery place. And that's it, Mr. President. So as I said, the Committee on Health and Welfare supports the recommendations. We feel that it improves the bill and helps us move forward. We know how critically important recovery is for citizens of the state who are addicted, and this is another step forward. So thank you, Mr. President. I ask the Senate's concurrence.
Question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've concurred with the House proposal of amendment on S-186. Senator from Chittenden, I believe you wanted to take up some bills off the calendar for notice.
Well, Mr. President, I was hoping to do S-98, S-213, and S-301 before we get to that.
Well, those are on the calendar for notice.
In
So,
that event, let me bring them all up at once. So I would make a single motion to suspend our rules in order to bring up for immediate action S-98, an act relating to Green Mountain Care Board authority over prescription drugs, S-213, an act relating to the regulation of wetlands, S-301, an act relating to miscellaneous agriculture, H-862, an act relating to approval of amendments to the Charter of Berry, H-869, an act relating to approval of the merger of the Brandon Fire District, and H-872, an act relating to miscellaneous updates to the powers of the Vermont Criminal Justice.
now the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate consideration of the following bills that appear on the calendar for notice: S-98, S-213, S-301, H-862, H-869, and H-872. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended your rules in order to take up for immediate consideration off the calendar for notice S-98, S-213, S-301, H-862, H-869, and H-872. With that, we'll take up S-98. S-98 is an act relating to Green Mountain Care Board authority over prescription drug costs. The standing question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal amendment? Senator, not ready?
No, Mr.
Senator?
President, please, we would like to pass over. It's on our schedule to review this in committee tomorrow.
Without objection, we will pass over that bill. We now have up for consideration S213. S213 is an act relating to the regulation of wetlands, river corridor development, and dam safety. The standing question is, shall the Senate concur with House Bill Amendment? Senator from Madison.
Mr. President, Senate Natural Resources and Energy is scheduled to take this bill up for review tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We would ask that we pass over.
In that case, Senator from Chittenden Central.
In the interest of certainty, let's move to H 862 and from there to 869 and 872.
And now for consideration, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the town of Barry. This bill is read for the first time, referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which consider the same and recommends that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 862, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the town of Barry.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. For the report of the Committee on Government Operations, the Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a charter amendment for the town of Berry, and it does two things. It allows their Board of Civil Authority to elect a vice chair. That's change number one. And it allows them to hold this election earlier in their term. They're elected in November and their term starts in February. So current law prohibits them from holding this election until their town meeting day, which for them is in May. So moving this election to February will allow them to elect leadership as soon as is realistic. The vote was 1,097 yes to 122 no. The vote in committee was 501, and we asked for the support of the Senate. Thank you.
So the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you ordered third reading of H 862. We now have up for consideration H 869. H 869 is an act relating to approval of the merger of Brandon Fire District Number 1 and Brandon Fire District Number 2. It was read for the first time, referred to Committee on Government Operations. It recommends that the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 869, an act relating to approval of the merger of the Brandon Fire District Number 1 and Brandon Fire District Number 2.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill for the report of the Committee on Government Operations, Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is about two water districts and the merger of the two of them. In Brandon, there are two water districts, 1 and 2. Number 2 serves a subdivision of only 54 homes. And it has over the years become unsustainable, both from a financial and from a technological and maintenance perspective. So this bill, this charter change would merge the two districts. So there would only be Brandon Fire District Number 1. For those of you who are not familiar with fire districts, they are basically the districts that provide water to many, many towns. They originally were created to put out fires, among other things, and to give water to people. So now they're just called fire districts, but they are really often water districts. This would mean that 85% of the town of Brandon would be served by Fire District Number 1, about 3,800 people. This passed out of committee 501, and we ask that the Senate concur. Thank you, Mr. President.
So the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You've ordered third reading of H 869. We now have up for consideration H 872. H 872 is read for the first time, is referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which consider the same and recommends that it ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H 872, an act relating to miscellaneous updates to the powers of the Vermont Criminal Justice Council and the duties of law enforcement officers.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. For the report of the committee, the Senator from Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. President. H 872 is a committee bill that completes some unfinished work from last year's update to the powers of the Vermont Criminal Justice Council by your Government Operations Committee. Last year, the body may recall that we added new types of category B professional misconduct violations and directed the VCJC to consider and develop new policies in specific areas. I'll remind the body that since Act 56, we expanded Vermont Criminal Justice Council in 2018. The council has had responsibility for training all certified law enforcement officers in the state, as well as the power to sanction LEOs for various offenses, up to and including permanent revocation or certification for some serious violations. During our work on S17 and H476 last year, there was a request from the Vermont Criminal Justice Council Chair that we consider allowing the council to take action as discretion where serious complaints about law enforcement officer misconduct come to the council. Under current law, some category B conduct may only be acted upon when there is a second or subsequent complaint. In H476, Act 74, we directed the VCJC to consider and report back whether it be appropriate to allow the council to act on first offenses of category B conduct, and whether the VCJC should have the authority to sanction officers for misconduct on and off duty. The VCJC tasked a standing Act 56 subcommittee with diverse stakeholder representation, including law enforcement, to assess these requests and make recommendations. On January 3rd, the subcommittee's recommendations, as approved by the full council, were reported to the legislature, and H872, excuse me, as a result of that process. H872 strikes a balance, allowing the VCJC more authority to act on a first complaint of officer misconduct, while placing limits on the sanctions that can be applied by the council. It consolidates the various category B violations into one list of prohibited acts under a new law enforcement officer code of conduct, and empowers the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council to update that code as needed through rulemaking. I'll now walk through the sections of the bill. Section 1 adds creating and amending the contents of the law enforcement code of conduct to the powers of the VCJC. Section 2 brings together professional misconduct violations under the new code and adds untruthfulness to that list, an area of misconduct already implicitly covered, but is made explicit here. I got a bug in my throat here. Section 3 requires the VCJC to adopt the law enforcement officer's code of conduct no later than December 31st, 2024. Section 4 removes references to category B conduct definitions that will be replaced by and included within the code. Section 5 limits the sanctions that the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council may impose in response to category B conduct on a first complaint. After an investigation and finding that misconduct has occurred, the council may only sanction the officer to the extent that the agency at which the officer is employed sanction the officer, except in the following circumstances: the LEO resigned or was terminated from his employment for the same conduct. The conduct was committed by the head of law enforcement agency. The law enforcement agency failed to perform a proper investigation of conduct. The sanction imposed by the agency was clearly unreasonable. Section 6 contains the effective dates. The bill is effective upon passage, except that the sections replacing current category B language of the code go into effect after the adoption of the code by the VCJC on January 1, 2025. Our witness list was Chris Brickle, Deputy Director, VCJC, Tim Devlin, our Legislative Counsel, Mello Grant, City Council Burlington, Ron Hoig, President of Vermont Associations of Chiefs, Roger Marcoux, Vice Chair, Vermont Sheriff's Association, Brett Mike McCarthy, reporter from the House GovOps Committee, Kim McManus, Associate General Counsel, Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council, William Sorrell, Chair, the VCJC, James Whitcomb, Deputy Director, Vermont State Police. The vote came out on a 5-0-1, and we ask for the Senate support on this bill. Thank you.
So the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Wyndham,
Thank you. May I require of the
reporter of the bill.
reporter, please?
The senator from Franklin is interrogated.
Thank you. Mr. President, did you have any witnesses from local police departments? Some of those you mentioned may also be from local police departments.
Chris Brickle is a retired police chief from Brandon, I believe. That could be corrected on that. Ron Hoig is presently the chief of police at Essex. Roger Marcucieros, and James Wickham with Vermont State Police. So there's a lot of law enforcement, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of H 872. All right. We now have up for consideration S 301. I'm trying to think where we are on this House Proposal Amendment, and I'm just looking at my own calendar, to remember what the question is going to be. S 301 is an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. The standing question is, shall the Senate concur with the House Proposal of Amendment? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as this bill left this body and went across, the House added 2 amendments, which you will find on page 4202. In section 18, in definition of farm operation, the House amended the definition to clarify that the newly eligible specialty service business providers included large vets that are operating, and then the changes or are proposing to operate a mobile unit that are farm operations eligible for assistance. The House wanted to clarify that an applicant did not need to already be operating a mobile unit. And then they added a section 20, which again is in the calendar today. It prohibits pet shops from selling dogs and cats beginning July 1st, 2024, except in certain circumstances. A pet shop can continue to sell dogs, cats, or wolf hybrids after that date if the pet shop was already selling them prior to July 1st, does not change ownership, maintains its license from the Ag Agency, and does not exceed the number of dogs sold in calendar year 2023. And pet shops can continue to provide space to animal shelter or rescue organizations offering dogs, cats, or wolf hybrids to the public for adoption for an adoption fee. We are asking the Senate Ag Committee for concurrence on those 2 changes to the bill, and then offers a further proposal of amendment, which you'll find on the next page, 4203, which has to do with bear parts. And this is offered by all of the members of the Senate Ag Committee. And we want to add this as section 21 to the bill. A person shall not buy or sell big game or the meat of big game within the state, except during the open season or for 20 days thereafter. And then this is the change, provided that a person shall not sell the paws or internal organs of a black bear separate from the animal as a whole, unless authorized under subsection B as a taxidermy product. And that is the carve out, that if it is a taxidermy product, it can include the paws, and those would not be prohibited. The reason for this, and forgive me if some of this is a bit unsettling, and we did hear from the Fish and Wildlife Commissioner, there are folks that either are selling parts now or come into the state and then leave and sell them in other places. The gallbladders of bears and the paws are used to make some soup, from what we heard, that is, I guess, of some medicinal quality. And they're sold in restaurants, for instance, in New York City for as much as $1,000 a bowl. We also heard the unsettling part was that in some cases, the bear is still alive when the paws are cut off. So we felt that we needed to step in and make this illegal. And so we are asking for a further proposal of amendment as it gets sent back to the other body. The vote was 5-0, and we ask for your concurrence on this bill.
Question is, shall the Senate concur with further help with this? Sorry. Shall the Senate concur with House Proposal Amendment on S 301 with further proposal amendment as offered by the Senator from Rutland and others? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have concurred with the House Proposal Amendment on S 301 with further proposal amendment as offered by the Senator from Rutland and others. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that said, I believe we had an extremely productive day. So I'll just conclude by messaging our actions to the House, and then we'll adjourn until tomorrow at 10. For that motion, I would ask that we suspend our rules in order to message to the House the actions taken on S58, an act relating to public safety, S186, an act relating to the systemic evaluation of recovery residences, S301, an act relating to miscellaneous agriculture subjects, H534, an act relating to retail theft, H644, an act relating to access to records by individuals, H707, an act relating to revising the delivery and governance of the Vermont workforce system, H745, an act relating to the Vermont Parentage Act, H794, an act relating to services provided by the Veterans Home, and H871, an act relating to the development of an updated state aid to school construction program.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to message your actions to the House on the following bills forthwith. S58, S186, S301, H534, H644, H707, H745, H794, and H871. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended your rules in order to message your actions taken on the following bills to the House forthwith. S58, an act relating to public safety. S186, an act relating to the systemic evaluation of recovery residences and recovery communities. S301, an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. H534, an act relating to retail theft. H644, an act relating to access to records by individuals who were in foster care. H707, an act relating to revising the delivery and governance of the Vermont workforce system. H745, an act relating to the Vermont Parentage Act. H794, an act relating to services provided by the Vermont Veterans Home. And H871, an act relating to the development of an updated state aid to school construction program. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I would move that the Senate stand in adjournment until Wednesday, May 8th at 10 a.m.
Are there any announcements? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet 5 minutes after the fall of the gavel. And since I just learned that half of my committee will be in another committee tomorrow morning, anyone that has amendments for the yield bill, that is 887. I think we've got 4 or 5 bills to get out today. So maybe about 4:30, if they stop by, we can take testimony on those.
Senator from Bennington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Education will meet 10 minutes after the fall of the gavel. Same message, if there are amendments that Senate Finance would like us to look at, or amendments particularly related to Section 1, the original Section 1 of the yield bill, please bring them to Senate Ed. Thank you.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I forgot one important announcement about tonight's retirement celebration, which is the senator from Caledonia was kind enough to make some desserts.
The pot is sweetened. Senator from Madison.
Mr. President, Senate Natural Resources and Energy will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Health and Welfare will meet at 9 a.m. We'll be discussing S98, so maybe bring your calendar along. Thank you.
Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Appropriations will meet at 2:15.
Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate GovOps will meet at 2:30. And might I inquire of the pro tem to just confirm a Rules Committee meeting tomorrow morning?
Senator
Thank
from
you.
Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have tentatively scheduled that. I have yet to speak with the other members of the Rules Committee to make sure that they're there, but I will promise the senator an answer firmly within the next hour.
Great, thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate now stand adjourned until May 8th at 10 a.m. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand adjourned until May 8th at 10 a.m.